Hello, I'm Dexter de Silva, co-chair of the 2015 Asian Conference on Psychology and the Behavioral Sciences. Joining us today is Professor McNally. Professor McNally is the director of the NACDA Program on Aging at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Thank you for joining us today, Professor.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay. Professor McNally's area is aging, especially in the United States, and the problems, especially with disabilities. What specific area are you looking at in your presentations or in your research, Professor McNally?
Well, this is part of a series of presentations and articles that looks at the impacts of family support on the mental health of the elderly, particularly as the elderly become frail or disabled. The paper itself has two very nice aspects to it. Primarily, it allows us to look at Asians in the United States as a representative population for the first time. Asian populations first began to enter the United States in the 1800s, but only since 2006 has the National Center for Health Statistics, which is the primary administrative office that collects health information in the United States, collected representative data on the Asian population. And now we can look with a great deal of accuracy on the lives of the elderly Asians in the United States and get past some of the mythology and ill-informed ideas that people have about Asians in the United States. The paper specifically looks at the impact of mental health of the elderly and how their overall health impacts. So as they get sick, do they become more distressed, more anxious, more mentally impaired?
Okay. Your focus is Asian Americans especially, and you use an expression, model ethnic or model minority stereotype. What exactly is that?
In the United States and in other places, there's an assumption that Asians do particularly well. They all educate their children, they're all doctors and lawyers, they all have good houses. It's a very odd stereotype attributed to the Asians. And myself and other colleagues have been working for several years now to address this model minority because, in fact, it has rather serious implications. Federally, Asians are often overlooked for minority protections, for example.
I see.
And our argument and the research shows quite clearly that Asians face the same problems as any other population in the United States, and they can't be treated as special and ignored for that reason.
I see. And another expression you use in your research is co-residence, which I think you state as an important factor in how they cope with aging or with disabilities. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. My work has always been very much focused on teaching the importance of co-residence and helping elderly people have successful aging later lives. Co-residence, as we measure in the United States, generally means the elderly person lives with a younger, usually an older child. They could live near each other, but we don't measure that very well in the United States. So we look at co-residence, and we find in general that co-residence is a positive impact. That one of the things we say is if you have $1 million in the bank and you break your hip and you live alone, you're in a lot more trouble than if you're poor and you live with your daughter and you break your hip because you've got someone there.
Right.
So with qualifications, co-residence is generally preferred for the elderly.
You just mentioned something I was thinking about, whether it was included in the term co-residence, just living nearby, because that's something that personally one of my brothers lived near my elderly mother, and that really works really well. And I think that's quite a common situation in Australia.
Yeah, in many parts of the world. I also live in Fiji from time to time. My wife is from Fiji, and the Indian population The Hindus tend to co-reside much more frequently, where the Islamics live in compounds,
I see.
where the family, the father and mother will have their house, but next door will be the children in their own houses. And that works extremely well as well.
Okay. One other question I wanted to ask you was, have you done any research on the aging of Japanese society? It's one of the fastest aging societies in the world. Have you done any research focused on Japan?
I have not myself. My aging project has a number of studies on aging in Japan. 2 reasons. One, there is no shortage of extremely talented researchers in Japan looking at the Japanese aging situation. In fact, one of my graduate school roommate was a very well-regarded Japanese researcher in aging. He used to work for the Office of Population Problems in Japan before he moved to private university. And secondly, interpreting results is important. I'll work with colleagues in Japan and Thailand, Vietnam, but I look at things from an American perspective.
Right.
And we need researchers with the cultural competencies to interpret results.
Yes.
So,
yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think. I think it's one of the characteristics of this conference, the Asian Conference on Psychology. It's the culture specificity of a lot of research.
Yes.
Especially in psychology, where a lot of the researchers come from the United States, and it needs to be interpreted within cultural context.
Absolutely.
Okay, and a final question. You've been coming to these conferences for a few years now. What is your relationship with IAFOR, Professor McNally?
Well, my relationship is evolving. Every time I come to an IAFOR meeting, I seem to find myself more attracted and more personally involved. I go to a lot of meetings throughout the years. Part of my job is to meet and talk about the elderly. But this particular meeting, I like the blend of senior researchers, students, and young faculty. I like the idea that young faculty, graduate students, get an opportunity to present their results in an open forum with the oversight of the conference, but also they get to talk and meet with senior researchers, get positive feedback, and learn something. And that's very rare. And I really respect IAFOR for achieving that nice balance of opportunity and education for the participants.
Great. Well, it goes along with my ideas about the positive things about IAFOR, and thank you for contributing to that regularly, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
And thank you for watching us at home. Please visit the IAFOR website for more information about IAFOR and upcoming events at iafor.org. Thank you.